When I was ordering parts to refresh the rubber and suspension on the Sleetwagon, I got all new bushings for the rear, new shocks, new bolts, and I'm doing similar up front. New control arms, new ball joints, new control arm bushings, new sway bar links. I got new struts, new rubber stops, and dust boots for the front struts. But just like the rear, I'm going to continue to use factory sway bar and the factory spring. Same thing in the front.
I'm waiting on a few parts to finish putting the back end together. So I start looking towards the front to see what I'm going to need. And there's some oil, a little bit, on the automatic transmission pan, and more oil around on the oil pan, and front diff and a bunch caked on, power steering lines, steering rack. Best I could tell, the pan gasket leaks somewhere. Because it doesn't really rise above the bottom of the block here. I haven't put many miles on this car since I got it and started diagnosing it. But there's a lot of oil buildup. So I think it's had a slow leak for a long time. That's what makes me think it's the oil pan. I cleaned this up once with some degreaser, but there was a lot of gunk on the bottom here and on the top of grease, like slung off of this CV joint. But I don't think it was this one. I think that this axle was changed, or the CV boot was replaced. So I think I'm going to keep these axles and see where that takes me. This is the left motor mount. You can see the tears in it. Since I'm in here, and I'm going to be dropping the subframe, the axles, the motor mounts will be exposed. So I'm going to change those too.
Like we said, the oil pan appears to be leaking slowly. So I have a gasket set. I wasn't sure when I was going to do this, but I guess I'm going to at least do the oil pan now and see what that gets me. I don't want to have to do the main seals right now, and I'm going to see how that goes. But I'm going to do the oil pan, and hopefully that stops the oil leak that we saw. So doing that means I have to pull the axles out, because the axles go through the oil pan on this XI. So if you're doing this job and you're just doing suspension, or maybe you're doing axles, everything that I do here, at least some of it will apply to you. So let's take some parts off. Before we get into taking this apart, you want to have someone hold the brakes so that you can loosen this axle nut. It'll be staked. You need to, with a chisel, get the stakes out of the slots so that the nut can spin freely. Like a lot of axle nuts, this is a 12-pointed, and you need 36mm 12-pointed socket to grab the 12-pointed axle nut and loosen it. You don't want to forget to loosen it and then have taken the brakes off. And then you won't have something to stop this from spinning. And you don't want to use the transmission to do that. If you're doing struts, or if you're doing axle replacement, or you're getting in and doing the oil pan like we are, you are going to want to disconnect the sway bar link from the strut so that it's out of the picture. If you aren't doing anything with the sway bar, you only need to remove the top link, and then you can just let it hang down. BMW OEM style is a T30 Torx in the center to hold the bolt, and then it has a 16mm nut threaded on. So you use a T30 Torx to hold it, and then counterclockwise to get the nut off. Aftermarket links that I have are not that style. They are, two sides are flat on the bolt head, allows you to hold the bolt, and then just drive a 16mm nut on there. So if you don't see a star in the center, then there's probably two flat sides you can get your wrench on to hold it. Because if you don't, the bolt spins. It's part of how the link works. So now we have that out of the way. I'm going to get penetrating oil on the clamp bolt, which holds the McPherson strut in its place, and see how tough that is to get off. We want to do everything we can to not have to drill this bolt out. So lots of penetrating oil, and be careful about how much force we're applying. So we have the caliper off to the side. We've taken the caliper bracket off. We've taken the rotor off. So now, removing the dust shield, there's these three 10mm bolts that holds the shield on. I have penetrating oil on a McPherson strut ring. I'm just letting that soak. I'm going to do that last so it holds this up until I know I have these guys free. When looking at rehabbing the rear diff, I was trying to decide how far to take it. There's no known issues with this diff. It's not leaking. I got some ultra copper to make a new gasket for the cover. I was going to take it off, but I'm just going to not. I'm going to see how this does. So I've drained out all of the oil that was in here. It was amber. It was used. The way you're supposed to fill this, the car is supposed to be level if you're changing the fluid in the car. Because I had taken everything apart, I just decided to do it on the bench. I feel like maybe I got more oil out that way. So you drain here, and they put that plug back. And then there's a plug back here, the fill plug. You take your syringe, or this brand, they have this here. It comes with a fill neck, so you can fill at a fill hole, stuff like that. And we're just going to fill this until it just starts to leak out of the hole. It's filled to there, and then that's it. And then we tighten up the fill plug, and we're ready to put this back in the car. The bolt for the strut broke off, like it does for a lot of people. So I'm going to have to drill that out so I don't have to buy a new spindle. This is the ball joint that connects to the wheel knuckle. It's pretty beat up. It's split. I thought that might have just been from someone's tool separating this to do some other kind of work, because this is the remanufactured axle side, but this is definitely loose. So this might have been a contributor to the steering wobbling at speed. So I'm glad we're changing this. So I just have to get this lower A-arm bushing off this A-arm, and then we'll replace with the new, we'll put the new A-arm on. I got a suspension kit. It came with just the bushing. So I'm going to push the old one out of this loop, put the new one in. Make sure the orientation is the same. The arm goes on the car like this. So this loop has to be this way. I couldn't get the left side steering knuckles pinch bolt out for the strut. I drilled it out bigger and bigger, seeing if it would let go. It let go enough that I could get the strut out, but I couldn't get this free. This is rusted in place. So I'm going to free the remaining material with 10.7 millimeter drill bit, and then re-tap M12 1.5, so then I can put the original pinch bolt in there. This is a common problem, so if you're trying to prevent it, I would make sure that this is clean, like get a pipe cleaner in there, get everything off, and then penetrating oil the ends and this center before you try moving this bolt. I'm working on pulling left side axle. I got the steering knuckle out of there, tie rod end off, and I think part of the steering problem might be this ball joint, because I think the only thing holding this ball joint in place is the rubber boot. It's super floppy. So hopefully this should straighten out that steering situation. If you're looking at this video to change the struts, or if you need to do the axle, this bolt here is exposed in the center, the strut pinch bolt, and can get corroded a lot in between the two halves of the pinch. So you want to make sure you clean that out real good to get any rust out of there. Put some penetrating oil on there, let it sit for a while. If you don't, you may very well break this bolt off. And if you break the bolt head off but the bolt's still in there, the strut won't be able to come out because there's a dent in the strut for where the bolt is as a safety measure. So then you'll have to get that bolt out or drill it out so that then the strut can come out. And if you're not planning on taking everything apart like we are, it's going to be a pain to drill that out. So I'm going to clean this real good in between. See if this bolt will come free. Taking off the right tie rod. It's very loose. This might be contributing to the steering shake as well. We're doing the front control arm bushing, and I cleaned it up with a little bit of wet sandpaper. There's a booger here, and that matches the rubber line here. So it goes on like that, and that allows the joint to move in the way that it's supposed to allow the A-arm travel when necessary. So we're going to press this in there, and then all the suspension parts are ready to go back together after we do that oil pan. I'm getting ready to drop the subframe so we can pull the axles so we can do the oil pan gasket. To do that, we need to get this bottom accessory, the power steering pump, loosen the 3 bolts, two from the bottom, one from over here, and hang it to the side. So I've removed the fan and the fan shroud so I get to the belt tensioner, so I can take the belt off the power steering pump. You can see that it's off, then we can get the pan off. Here I'm swapping out the springs on the front struts. I have a string compressor with a nice lip to hold the spring together. There's a lot of force between these here. Please don't try to take the nut off without having a string compressor. There's a nut on the end of the strut shaft piston, and a hex key center. OEM on the E46 is 21 millimeter with a 6 millimeter key. So get yourself one of these sockets because it's thin walled and it's half. So it'll fit onto there and allow you to hold the center piston as you loosen. If you don't hold the center, this will just spin. So when we put aftermarket heavy duty replacement on, put new rubber, new dust cover, because it's heavy duty, it's 22 millimeter nut with a 7 millimeter center shaft hex key. Using this when we put it back together, we'll make sure we don't mar the shaft or anything to get this tightened back down to spec. So definitely recommend getting these sockets to get the job done.
I'm letting the subframe down. It's probably a good thing I plan on changing these engine mounts, because this is the new one. It's no longer connected to the top piece. I haven't removed the nut for the top yet. It just tore out. I disconnected the 2 mount points for the power steering, and I pushed the power steering back, and now I have the subframe on this transmission jack, and I moved my trailer jacks out of the way, so now I can just pull it out and clean it up and then do the inner tie rod joints on the power steering rack. So I took the right side motor mount out. It was a little beat too. I don't know what they did with this car, but they probably shouldn't have. Or maybe this is way overdue, but like, I don't know. The nut came off easy, so this just beat.
Sure isn't just how it's supposed to work.
Oh yeah, that's how you go down the road.
So we got the subframe out of the way. Now we can pull the axles out of the way so we can drop the oil pan. There's a lock ring that holds the inner axle shaft in the differential. For BMW axles, this works pretty good as long as you can get it open enough to start. Then you'll be on both sides. And you should be able to pry it out. It doesn't take a lot of force, so don't use more force than you need to get it free. Okay, I think I'm free. Yeah. So this is the right side. So this is long because it goes to the differential on the left side of the engine. I'm going to pull it out nice and evenly. And don't hurt the axle seal. Oh, we do need a little more. Might just need a twist. I got the right side axle out, but not without doing some damage. As far as I can tell, the lock ring jammed
and I flattened these teeth a little bit. I think I can clean these up with a file. But a more important question right now is, why did this clip jam? Because the other side came out no problem. I had ordered new clips because I wasn't sure of the state of these. I know the one side was reman. It's not that old. So hopefully you can see this. This clip is longer by probably that much, which is a little less than how much got bent to the side. This shaft circlip 214961, this is the one that's supposed to be on a whole bunch of half shafts for various BMWs. So I don't know why this was on there. I don't think that it stretched as much as we're seeing here. But since we're doing the job where I'm taking the diff off and we're taking the oil pan off, I can see if I have any of these metal shavings, I'll be able to clean it up, because we are doing the insane job where we replace everything. You know, I tried to think after I got it out, what could I have done differently? But in the end, the only thing that got it out was a 10-pound slide hammer. It wasn't coming out. I tried hitting with a dead blow hammer and with a pin, trying to hit the inside lip of this axle, and it didn't budge.